committees. This channel has been set up to make sure that anyone can observe our democratic meetings. Please therefore remember that this meeting could be watched anywhere at any time by anyone with access to the internet. There is a slight delay between the meeting and the broadcast of about 30 seconds. Webcast officer, please can you commence the broadcast and confirm?
Confirmed.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of Cabinet. Before we commence with the proceedings, I can confirm that the Council has adopted some basic etiquette rules for its remote meetings. For ease, these are as follows. Only speak when the Chairman invites you to do so. Members, please let the Chairman know when you wish to speak through the chat function. The Chairman will introduce speakers in the order that the request to speak was made, unless there is a point of order which will be prioritised. Please minimise all distractions while you are in the meeting. Members are asked to mute your microphone when not speaking and consider turning off your video to reduce interference on the audio feed. Please bear in mind there may be a lag between speaking and other attendees hearing you. Presentations, images or video footage should have been made available to you in advance of this meeting and will be made visible on the screen. Please indicate via the chat function if there is a problem. When referring to a report, please quote the page and paragraph number. There is no private business for this evening. However, members are reminded that it is their responsibility to make sure that their venue and connection is private. If you lose connection at any point and are unable to immediately rejoin, then please call the meeting facilitator. Contact details have been provided. Please only use the chat function for the purpose prescribed for requesting to speak or for a point of order. The chat function is subject to the Access of Information Regimes, FOI and EIR, and is also subject to data protection, rules of defamation, and the Council's Code of Conduct. For this meeting, councillors are identified by a prefix of CLLR before their name. There are officers in attendance, and they are identified with the prefix of officer. There is a minute taker for this meeting and 2 meeting facilitators. I can confirm that this meeting is quorate. The Cabinet consists of the following members: Councillors Butland, Cunningham, Ritchie, McKee, Schmidt, Bebb, Tattersley, Bowers and Spray. Councillors Mann, Abbott and Mrs Pell are also in attendance as invitees of this meeting. The officers in attendance for this meeting are Andy Wright, Chris Fleetham, Sherry Root, Dominic Collins, Kim Cole, Trevor Wilson, Tracy Headford, Dan Montague, James Sinclair and Aidan Kelly. My name is Chloe Waite and I will be the meeting facilitator for this meeting. I will now hand over to the Chairman, Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Chloe. Good evening, members. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen who may be watching on YouTube. Welcome to this meeting of the Braintree District Council Cabinet. There are no apologies for absence. I think everyone who is due to be here is here. So I will move on to item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest which any member has? Councillor Mrs Pell.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. It's an NPI interest in item 5B, page 79, regarding CCTV in Houston Public Gardens. I am the Chairman of the Management Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Pell. Any other declarations of interest? No, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Go on to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. That's the meeting held on the 21st of October. These minutes have been circulated. Members of Cabinet, are you content that they are a true record of the meeting? If you could indicate with your hands up. Yes, I'm seeing that. Okay, thank you very much. Item 4, public question time. There are no members of the public who wish to raise any questions, but Councillor Abbott has 2 questions, I think. Councillor Abbott, would you like to put your question probably one at a time so we can get a response? Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. Yes, but I just wanted to clarify that I'm not speaking because I've been invited to Cabinet, but because I've had to register a public question time. My first question relates to agenda item 5A. The report on page 15 refers to a cycling group having been set up to take forward the cycling and walking agenda. Given the importance of this agenda to residents, interest groups and many members of BDC, can it please be confirmed as to what is the composition of the cycling group, and also if its remit includes the provision of new segregated cycling routes that would connect towns to villages? If the remit does include such routes, please could it be said where they are in broad terms?
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. I'll ask Councillor Ritchie as chairman of that group to respond. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, we've recently had a meeting of the EATF, which includes members across Essex County Council officers and members, Braintree District Council officers and members, members of Essex Highways, Active Essex, and also members of the public, one of those being Peter Cohn, who I think Councillor Abbott is aware of. The remit of that group is obviously just to look at the EATF funding and how that can be spent in Braintree to enable sustainable travel. What we're looking to do is to actually capture the key personnel of that group and use it as a blueprint, as a group of people to carry our cycling strategy forward. And we're hoping to be able to harness the knowledge and the consultative way that group has met previously, and again is due to meet this week. Obviously, the options will be to look at what we can do for district-wide connectivity for these cycling routes and cycling and network. More importantly, how they will be funded, and then obviously how we can select those routes and deliver our sustainable travel policy across the district. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Abbott, your second question, please.
Yes, thank you. So this relates to agenda item 5B. On page 53, paragraph 2.3, reference is made to the welcome fact that BDC continues to use new homes bonus funding for investment in infrastructure and affordable housing instead of for day-to-day spending. Whilst accepting the view of the BDC administration, as Councillor Butland expressed at the recent PMB meeting, that it was a decision made by Essex County Council to halve the funding for the LHPs, surely we have to be pragmatic and accept that, in quotes, we are where we are, which is unfortunately that the Braintree LHP ran out of money for this financial year some months ago and has a scheme list that would take up to 6 years to fund at current budget allocation, even if no new schemes came forward. Given this, why is the BDC administration so against a one-off funding of the Braintree LHP from NHB funding, which could, for example, be earmarked to get some of the larger LHP schemes moving forward, thereby improving connectivity and safety through sensible local investment?
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. I'll respond to that question. As you say, it is a question which was also discussed at the meeting of the Performance Management Board. Braintree District Council took a decision when the County Council reduced the funding for the LHPs and was invited then to make up the shortfall, if I can put it that way, from its own resources. That we felt there were other priorities that we wished to use the new homes bonus on. One of those priorities, for example, being just over £2.5 million to support the development of the Millennium Slips, which is not something which is the responsibility of the District Council, but clearly would have a huge impact on the district as a whole, on that very difficult junction there, which, if I'm not mistaken, falls into Councillor Abbott's county area, or certainly on the boundary of it. We say in the report in 2.3 that we wouldn't use the homes bonus to support the council's day-to-day spending. Perhaps we should also say, and not to support the county council's day-to-day spending. But it is a reasonable question to say, why don't we spend 400,000 on that? The return question is, where does that 400,000 come from? We are planning to put aside nearly £500,000 to the green initiative, that we want to take forward. We could take 400,000 away from that and give it to the LHP. I don't think that would be right, because I think there are many other areas that we would want to do. I do understand that there are a number of projects on the LHP waiting list. Many of them will be in the wards of people who are on this meeting tonight. But it is a difficult decision. And at the last PMB, one of Councillor Abbott's colleagues wanted us to put £1 million rather than £500,000 into the Green initiative. Well, that's £1 million now, virtually, that Councillor Abbott and his colleagues want us to find. I don't mind, but you have to say where the money is coming from.
New homes bonus. It's in my question. New homes bonus. It's in my question. New homes bonus.
At the moment, we have decided, and it's set out in the report, how we would use that new homes bonus. Now, it will be up to others, and there will be an opportunity, obviously, when we present our budget, for alternative views to be put. But whichever way, you can only spend the money once. And other things that the new homes bonus is being used for, and let's think of the ways in which we have done that, for example, on broadband, which is something that people want in this district, etc. Over 600,000 pounds gone from this. We have used it on those things, which have shown how we're prepared to help. But the LHP at the moment is something which I think, and as a council we think, is rightly the responsibility of the county council. And I will certainly join Councillor Abbott in pushing for greater money coming out from the county to LHPs. But I don't think it should be the district council that picks up the tab every time. We do a lot to work with the county, but this is one thing which I think does need greater input from the county to get into the waiting list of projects which Councillor Abbott quite rightly points out. Okay, we'll move on to item 5, finance and performance management. And before we actually take the items that appeared on the original agenda, there is a matter of urgency which I would like to bring before members tonight. And that is the COVID-19 additional restrictions grant. Just before I ask Councillor Bebb to introduce this paper, the reason why this is late and not on the agenda in the normal timely manner that things do appear on our agendas is that this was as a result of a government announcement earlier this month and an allocation which was actually only announced 10 days ago of funding to Braintree District Council. And if we don't take it today, it would mean that we would have to await a further cabinet meeting. And I think you will see from the presentation of the report, it is vitally important that we get this financial support out to businesses now. So my apologies to both members of cabinet and all members of the council that this was not initially in the agenda, but I hope you will accept that the reasons are very valid reasons and with the best of intentions. So without more ado, I'll ask Councillor Bebb to introduce the paper.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. Just bear with me a second while I pull down a paper that has just gone missing off my screen. Sorry about that. Click the critical moment, it's all gone. It was there, and it's now disappeared. Never mind. Hold on. Sorry about this, members. Hold on. No. Disappeared at the particular moment. Never mind. We have been provided with 3 additional grants to cater for the COVID new lockdown, and they are only provided last week. And in fact, last Monday, there are 3 of these, and we, in fact, for 2 of them, we have already set them in motion because the criteria and scheme is all set out by the government, and we've already started advertising those, and we've had some applications, and we've actually already made some allocations of funding. So the three particular grants. There's one is in fact for a small grant of relatively small of sorry, I'm working without blind here at the moment and without the paper in front of me, which has disappeared from my screen. It's for 200 some odd thousand, and that is for businesses that are open from memory. Bear with me a moment. Sorry about this. Just bear with me a moment. Right. This is for open businesses. We provided with £322,000 to distribute to businesses that have been impacted by but remain open. So that is already in operation. This is funding is primarily restricted to businesses in the hospitality, accommodation and leisure sectors with a rateable value. So they do pay business rates. The second one was the local restriction support grant closed. This is grant payable for those businesses that have been forced to close. We've been provided with just over £2 million to those businesses that have been forced to close due to the new lockdown. This will be a one-off grant, normally directly payable to the eligible businesses to cover a 28-day period for businesses with a rateable value as defined by the government. Now, those are already in train. In addition, we've been provided with something called the Additional Restrictions Grant. Now, we've been provided with just over £3 million to support businesses that really fall between the cracks. Those that have a trade but don't in fact necessarily pay business rates. And this includes businesses that don't pay business rates and that have been required to close but are still severely impacted. The government guidance for this grant states that the criteria and eligibility for its distribution is to be set at the discretion of the local authority. And that is what we're going to be discussing in a moment. We've got an outline criteria that we've set, and we need to discuss that in a bit more detail in a moment. And at this point, I think I will hand over to Councillor Cunningham, who will elaborate a little bit more.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. Thank you through you, Chairman. The recommendations that we have in front of us tonight allow us to make some key decisions in distributing the additional restrictions grant, but also give us tremendous flexibility in terms of our options going forward. In reference to recommendation 1, the distribution of additional grants to local businesses in accordance with the criteria set out in paragraph 1.6, and reference to any surplus grant, it would be our firm intention to do all we can to ensure all that grant that is allocated for AGR grant funding is allocated. However, it does give us the scope to renew and add 2 additional Braintree District Council pots of money to support business support measures. So what we would envisage if that support if those grants weren't allocated, this could be used to complement existing support programs such as the Industrial Grant Fund, the Young Entrepreneurs Scheme, and other such measures that we would look to develop to support economic recovery, the e-commerce scheme being another such scheme. In reference to item 2, to retain up to 10% of the additional restrictions grant for future allocation with a collaborative approach with the North Essex authorities through the North Essex Economic Board, I am very optimistic and pleased that we are considering this approach. The North Essex Economic Strategy was formed 2 years ago in 2018 to support wider growth and priorities across a wider geographical area. The North Essex Economic Growth Strategy Board currently consists of the districts of Uttlesford, the districts of Braintree, the borough of Chelmsford, the district of Tendring, and a late but very welcome addition is the City of Chelmsford local authority area, working with Essex County Council. In delivering priorities for a wider area, the North Essex Board is premised on the fact that businesses do not operate within parochial geographical political areas, but work along economic corridors, and very often their supply chain exists in those local economic corridors. It was our express hope before the pandemic struck to deliver initiatives that not only attract inward investment, but also help make that great switch in our local economy from being a low unemployment economy, but with too much of an emphasis on lower paid, low skilled jobs. Obviously, with the pandemic, ambition and achievable, and what is achievable has had to be more realistic, and therefore the onus has been on economic survival and economic recovery. By allocating a sum to a larger working group, we can work on shared priorities across that area and take advantage of economies of scale in terms of procuring business support packages. This will be beneficial to a wider number of businesses and their potential employees, and it can be delivered more cost effectively. This is an approach that many of us have wanted to take in North Essex for quite some time, and circumstances that we would never have chosen has accelerated that desire to take that approach. I am confident, Mr. Chairman, that with the excellent conversations we've had at both member and officer level, under the pressure of time, that there will be a collaborative approach across all local authorities. Each local authority is making their decision-making process, taking their decision-making process in a different way, and advice from our monitoring officer is the reason why this paper has come forward to this cabinet meeting this evening. Should we not get a collaborative approach, which I do not expect, the option there is for us to use that 10% in excess of £300,000 of the just over £3 million allocated for AGR, again, to bring forward our own schemes complementing what we are currently delivering at the moment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Tattersley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How will we publicise the availability of the additional restrictions grant, given that those businesses who might be eligible are likely to be difficult to reach simply because they don't pay business rates and so wouldn't be on our normal circulation lists?
Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley, for that question. And yes, he's absolutely right. There will be a challenge there, but I think it'll be a challenge met by our improved social media platforms and the improved contact base we have as a result of our dealings with the business community since the start of the pandemic. They will be widely publicised using the council's communication channels and other forums. But Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, although this isn't the specific defined criteria, those businesses that we would envisage being able to help through the AGR are those supplying the retail and hospitality sectors who are outside the business rates, including market traders, mobile home workers, shared space users, animal groomers, accommodation providers, private hire vehicles, community facilities, any other businesses that can evidence a strong business need within an eligibility criteria and are based within the local authority area of Braintree District Council and not part of a larger national chain or franchise, and we're trading on the 5th of November. There will be an emphasis on wanting to support those businesses that have a high fixed costs, but not necessarily, that does not include business rates. So capital outlay that may not be being used at this moment in time. That's the criteria we're working towards at this moment in time. And we'll hope to define within the space of the next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go back to Councillor Bebb, are there any other comments or questions anyone has? No. I'll go back to Councillor Bebb to formally move the recommended decision. And I think, Councillor Bebb, we just want to tidy up the first recommendation, I think. Do we not?
We do. Just before that, there's one other further addition to these recommendations. It's probable that other funding will be made available in the next few weeks and months by Essex County Council to distribute to Braintree businesses in support of their operations during the post-COVID crisis. Therefore, the council needs to be ready to distribute any future funding at speed to support business survival. So we want authority tonight to say that you would be happy for us to work with Essex County Council on that. And in terms of what you were saying, that the recommendations are that the Cabinet agrees to distribute the additional business grants to local businesses in accordance with the criteria set out in, not in 1.9, but in 1.6. And with any surplus grant being used to provide business support through the council's schemes already in place, as we've already heard, to retain up to 10% of the additional restrictions grant for future allocations and work through the North Essex Economic Board. And then, as I've said, to accept all future requests from Essex County Council to distribute additional funding received as a result of the COVID pandemic, following consultation with the Cabinet Member for Finance and Performance and the Section 151 officer. And also to delegate authority to the Cabinet Member for Finance and Performance and Management in conjunction with the Deputy Reader and Cabinet Member for Economic Development and Infrastructure to approve the collective approach with the North Essex authorities for the distribution of retained 10%. So I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Bebb. If there's no one else who wants to say anything, can I take it that we approve those recommendations as amended? Is that agreed? I'm seeing yes. Right. Thank you very much. Thank you. We move on then to the agenda as was originally issued. Item 5A, the second quarter performance report 2020-2021. Which starts on page 5 of your agenda, and I'll ask Councillor Bebb, please.
Yes, in the usual 3 sections, I just want to say that despite the problems of the impact of the COVID outbreak on our residents and communities and so on, our performance has been pretty good, considering, pretty good. In terms of projects, 46 projects are on track and progressing well. 5 projects have amber status due to the impact of the pandemic, and 1 project has been cancelled due to missing the planting season in 2020. So then if I move on to the performance indicators as such, there are 7 performance indicators that are all on track and performing well, and there's 7 that haven't actually met target. Now, of 3 of these missed target by less than 5%, and 4 have missed target by more than 5%. Now, the areas of underperformance are in relation to recycling rates. Now, that's more than 5%. Although it's missed performance, and I'm not sure whether my colleague, Councillor Schmidt, wants to say anything, it's not as bad as it would appear because we've achieved 53.08% against a target of 60%. But in the second quarter, the recycling performance is in fact 6.13% higher than the previous quarter. In the first quarter, the garden waste service was suspended due to the restrictions imposed during lockdown. A partial service was reintroduced from May before a full service commenced in July. The increase in tonnage in the second quarter is also due to the fact that residents are continuing to work from home as a result of the pandemic, and households are generating more waste than ever before. So it's quite a big improvement as such. I don't know whether anyone wants to weigh anything on that before I move on to another one. I might just say that 8 out of 10 councils have reported an increase in the amount of material collected since the COVID outbreak. Any questions on that one before I move on?
Do you wish to add anything, Councillor Mrs. Schmidt?
No. Councillor Bebb's stolen my thunder. It's all facts that he's given. Yes, there's an increase in everything because people are working from home, and it is quite an interesting difference. I mean, against this time last year, it's 2,000 tonnes in total. It just goes to show what we normally dispose of at work. But yes, it's not too bad considering.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Back to you, Councillor Bebb.
The next one where we've underperformed is the average waiting time for applicants for the disabled facilities grants. This has dropped a fair bit, understandably, because we haven't been able to get access to premises, both to assess, but also for estimates by contractors and the like. So that's been quite sorely impacted, and of course the overall has had a knock-on effect on the second quarter due to delays caused by not being able to visit in the first place. So the situation is improving, but it'll take some time to get back to how things were prior to the lockdown. Okay, anything on that? No? Next one is the average call answer time in the customer service centre, 34 seconds against the target of 15. Now, although 34 seconds is still a good answering time in comparison with the number of other organisations, it's still far from what we would like to achieve. In the second quarter, over 30,000 calls were handled, which is an increase of 13% on the first quarter. The customer service centre take bookings for bulky waste and pest control, which is new activities that they've taken on, and that's an increase. And there's been an increase in demand over the summer months. These calls take longer to process than the normal calls. Due to the high number of calls from customers regarding bulky waste and collection and so on, our total time is obviously being extended. But the other thing is, I would like to point out that additional resources allocated to the team during the lockdown were moved to cover reception when the offices reopened of receptions in September. So the call answering time is expected to reduce over time. I move on to the collection rate for business rates, which is giving cause for concern. We've achieved 54.9% against a target of 57.95% at the same time last year. Now, this sounds not so good. However, this is where statistics can distort. Performance is lower, but it is also on a reduced net actual collectible amount because the extended retail rate relief was given, which reduced the total amount of tax to be collected. In fact, there was something like £19 million has been awarded in retail relief, which we didn't have to collect. So that's distorted the shortfall on collection. We are in the process of actively reminding businesses, and in fact, we're having to issue some summonses, although that's now been thwarted by the courts being closed. But we are nevertheless ringing and contacting businesses to remind them that they're overdue. Then, if I can now move on to AMBER performance indicators, the percentage of invoices paid within 30 days, that's 96.86% instead of the target of 99.25%. In second quarter, 2,489 invoices out of 2,589 were processed within the 30 days. This is partly due to the working from home and modifying processes, but that is in the process of improving. Then there are two more. Well, collection of rate for council tax, that's down by a variance of about just over 1%, achieved 57.63% against the target of 58.8%. That sounds not too good. However, across the authorities in Essex, we're the top performing. In fact, Braintree has achieved this 57.83%, and that's the top of all, because they range downwards to about 50%. So we're again gently reminding council taxpayers to pay up. There's obviously a backlog there, and we hope that will catch up in time, but we do know some households are somewhat pressed. So I think I'll leave those performance indicators to one side and then turn latterly to finance. An overall adverse variation before the COVID support package has been paid is a projected adverse balance of £2.651 million. Across all services, staffing budgets were forecast to be underspent by about £400,000. However, after allowing for the corporate efficiency target of £300,000, this results in a net projected underspend of £102,000. However, under other expenditure is projected to be over budget by £584,000. Income, of course, is being impacted and is projected to be underachieved by just about £2.169 million. The amount of government support through emergency funding and other grants, along with the estimate of the amount expected from the income compensation scheme, is £2.668 million. The net impact of the COVID pandemic on the general fund revenue is therefore £587,000 overspend. We've reassessed our spending generally, and we've been able to make some potential savings with a positive amount added to the budget for those savings of £604,000, resulting in the net overall general fund position at this time being a projected positive variance of £17,000, but it could move quite quickly as other pressures come along. So that's where we are on the finance performance. I'd be happy to take any questions on the performance management for the second quarter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bebb. Any comments or questions from anyone? Either on the performance or on the financial position? What I would say is I think our sorry, Councillor Tattersley, did I see your hand go up? Councillor Tattersley.
Yeah, I just wondered whether we've seen any significant drop in performance since a number of our staff have been working from home. I certainly haven't detected any, and it seems to be working reasonably well, but I don't have the overall picture.
Well, all I can comment is that staff have been working immensely hard, putting in very, very long hours and going the extra mile, and consequently kept up our income and our performance generally. Just think of the tremendous amount of work that's been allocated to the council for all the distribution of all the business grants that we've allocated over the last few months and now currently.
Yes, I agree with you, Councillor Bebb. I think also we've made a very good start. I looked to Councillor Cunningham for confirmation on grants that were only brought in last week. I think already a sizable number, Councillor Cunningham?
Yes, in excess of £50,000 was allocated towards the back end of last week, so to a number of companies. So it was a really good, fast start. excellent.
Okay. So that's performance. Finance, I was just going to add, before Councillor Tattersley mentioned it, that for many local authorities, they are in severe financial trouble. I'm not saying that we don't have a challenging task ahead of us, but actually I think we're in a pretty good position, and a position which many councils would like to be, not least Croydon. Okay, so if there are no other comments or questions, are you happy to note the report? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. We'll go on to item 5B, the medium-term financial strategy, which members starts at page 43 on your agenda. And again, Councillor Bebb, please.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. I don't intend to unpack this unduly because we are now at the second or third stage on the whole budget setting process. We had a very useful meeting even last week on the Performance Management Board when all members of the council were invited to attend that, and we had, I think, a very informative session on where we're at. However, I will nevertheless highlight some items from the executive summary of the medium-term financial strategy. And first of all, section 3 on government funding just to reiterate that we have the budget, of course, the Treasury announced that the November budget has been delayed till the new year, and that also the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government had already confirmed that the review of relative needs and resourcing, namely the so-called fair funding review, and the 75% business rates retention scheme would not be implemented for 21-22. And also to note that it was assumed that the financial settlement for 21-22 will not be on a 4-year basis, but will be a rolling forward of last year's scheme and will be a one-off scheme. And it also hoped that that the provisional financial settlement for 21-22 will be published in mid-December. There's a budget next week, but the mid-December is when we hope to have our financial settlement announced by the government. Now, in terms of next section, and that was an update on financial assumptions for the current medium-term financial strategy. We've been looking at assumptions and tweaking and so on, and we've made a few modifications. I'll just give you one example. 5 unavoidable budget changes identified for 21-22, which have been reviewed, and some have been tweaked. And for example, the additional waste vehicle and crew has been not required for next year, so that's been put back, and the various other changes made. So I'm not going to unpack most of those. But we do have certain other changes that are likely to happen, and some may be at short notice. So we have taken the pragmatic view, I think, that at this time, one of the most unknown for 21-22 is how the council's income generating services will recover, and to what extent customer demand may change in the post-COVID time. So rather than attempt to estimate and cast around, we've decided to propose a provision to earmark from unallocated balances to cover potential shortfalls in income. The amount of £1 million should be earmarked and put aside for that. Okay, so I think that's a pragmatic way forward. I could then move forward in terms of business rates. We have decided to, in fact, in September, MHCLG wrote to lead authorities for each current pool for the business rate pool with an invitation to indicate preferred pooling. We have agreed to with other members of the pool to form a new business rates pool for next year, which helps to supplement our income. The local council tax support scheme, that's worked really well, and we're not proposing to make any changes, so we're proposing that it continues with the same criteria as we had before. Moving on to council tax, it's estimated the balance for the collection funds is going to be about £171,000. Yeah, £171,882. That's our portion of the total for the county of before the other authorities of £1.3 million. We're proposing, as we've done before, to allocate a proportion of that to town and parish councils, and that portion is £33,640 of that surplus is allocated out of that council tax collection fund. And looking ahead at other elements, well, we're looking at, in our calculations, at the 30th of November, that's when the corporate director responsible for finance does the calculation on the tax base, and we reckon that is likely to be 53,650, to yet to be confirmed, of course, an increase of 0.5% over the previous year. And we're then moving on, we are then looking to see at the bottom line how much council tax will we need to raise to balance the budget. And it's going to be tough, but we've decided we're waiting for the confirmation of the proposed referendum limiter for 21-22, but that is likely to be a maximum of 2%. So we're proposing to allocate 2% council tax increase, and that will mean for a Band D property, council tax level of £188.37. Sorry, 188.37, and for the other years, for running forward for the 4-year medium-term financial strategy, we're proposing something similar of about a 2% increase. So this means, bottom line, that in summary, the updated financial profile for 21-22 to 24-25 for the 4 years runs as follows. For 21-22, we will be short of £239,315, and we're proposing to withdraw that from the unallocated balance, rather than at this fairly late stage start making cuts to next year's budget. Let's just take it from the unallocated budget balance. For the following year, 22-23, the shortfall would be 778,865,000. We're proposing that we're also that would be have to look at that time to make further savings that year to make good the amount we're taking from the unallocated budget for next year. So we're looking to, in effect, not make just a £778,000 saving, but an additional 239,000 for the amount for next year. Shortfall for 23-24 would be 380,612, and for 24-25 a shortfall of 280,000. That's about £1.4 million in total over those 4 years, which we've got to address. Now, that's notwithstanding that there could be lots of changes on the way. Over these 3 years, it should be noted that these years are after the single 1-year finance settlement and are likely to be subject to significant changes to the fair funding review when that's brought in, and any government's decision regarding the proposed new 75% business rate retention scheme, and also the 21 spending review. So there's a lot on the horizon. Never mind in the first instance. So we've got other things to think about: the local government settlement, new homes bonus, the pay awards, the council tax and business shortfalls, and also Essex County Council contributions for waste, for community transport, and council tax sharing agreement. So there's quite a lot of uncertainty. So at this stage, we're proposing for the recommendations that the Cabinet has agreed to note the changes proposed for the no changes proposed for the local council tax support scheme for 21-22, that the revenue, budget and capital programme as we've presented in this PET report constitute the initial budget proposals, and that views are sought as appropriate, and that Cabinet recommends to full council to agree that a total of £33,640 of the surplus of the council tax collection fund be allocated to the town and parish councils in 21-22 as detailed in Appendix A of this report. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bebb. Any comments or questions from colleagues? Councillor Cunningham.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to say thank you to Councillor Bebb, but agree the prudent and responsible approach in unprecedented times, and very pleased at this moment in time we can still recommend funding to local parish and town councils. I think that's vitally important, and very pleased that despite these difficult times we're still able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Any other comments? Councillor McKee.
Yes, thank you. Clearly, I'm supporting Councillor Bebb's document this evening, and I think it's worthy to note we are still spending significant amount of capital on the programmes that we are looking at of improving our town centres, and in fact building an employment site, an innovation centre up on Horizon 120. Those have not stopped due to lack of capital, so we're still investing in our residents, in jobs and journeys and so on, at our original plans. I think it's laudable that we can still do that.
Thank you, Councillor McKee. I agree very much. If we hadn't have got that financial strength, we would not be in a position to be able still to be spending for the future, because we will need that when we come out of the current unusual circumstances. Any other comments? If not, colleagues, the recommendations are on page 49 of your agenda papers. Are you happy to accept the 3 recommendations there? Please show if you're in favour. Yep, fine, thank you. That is agreed. We now move on to corporate transformation, item 6 and 6A, award of temporary labour contract, which is on page 84 of your agenda. And when I get there, right, Councillor McKee. I just didn't want to say, I thought it was Councillor McKee, but I didn't want to say a name and then find I got the wrong one and frighten the life out of one of my colleagues. So Councillor McKee is going to take this paper on the award of the temporary labour contract.
Thank you, Chair and colleagues. The current temporary labour contract with CSS Recruitment will end on the 29th of January 2021. The Council has undertaken a robust procurement exercise for the provision of temporary recruitment with a maximum contract term of 5 years, an initial 3 years with an option to extend for a further 2 12-month periods. All tender documentation evaluation criteria was drafted with operations colleagues and the evaluation undertaken with the operations team. Quality thresholds were set, including the need to ensure staff could be transported to site, ensuring local supply, fitting within the rules allowed by the contract regulations. All but 2 bidders failed to meet the threshold. The 2 bidders that were shortlisted both provided strong quality responses. The winning bidder, First Call Contract Services Limited, provided a more competitive pricing proposal compared to the second place bidder, CSS Recruitment, resulting in a financial saving to the council, an estimated £23,000 per annum and £115,000 over the contract period against the current budget. Given that much of the contract value consists of workers' salaries which cannot be altered, this equates to an actual saving on the influenceable spend, i.e. markup and uniform costs, of approximately 44%. In addition to pricing difference, the benefits from First Call were innovation to current operations, including timesheet management technology, electronic bio panel with biometric login. This technology has mainly features which will enable effective management, including targeted messages for workers' availability, real-time performance management portal, which can be accessed electronically at any time by authorised council officers. This will allow the council to have an efficient tools to effectively manage the contract and continuously monitor performance. First Call Contract Services have offered social value opportunities, as well as part of their solution will include utilising their apprenticeship levy fund to create apprenticeship posts within the council. As the current provider, First Call Contract Services will have an office based in Braintree and will assist the local job centre to provide the opportunity to residents who are on the long-term unemployment. The local office opens at 6 a.m. on weekdays and will support the contract to fulfil demand and be on hand to deal with any issues that may arise at short notice. The recommended decision. Recommended decision on page 84. Cabinet agrees to award a 3-year contract with the provision to extend for 2 further 12-month periods to First Call Contract Services Limited, who submitted the most economic and advantageous tender for the contract value of £3 million. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor McKee. I think Councillor Tattersley wants to say something. Councillor Tattersley?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This seems to me to be excellent value for money. Just to clarify, when you run refuse and waste services and so on, there are always occasions when you don't have a full complement of staff turn up for one reason or another. And this is the arrangements where we arrange for people to come in at very short notice to carry out the odd one or 2 days. And the fact that we managed to keep our refuse collection services running well, the fact that we rarely ever don't bin up at the end of the day, I think is testament to these sorts of contract. And of course, it's not all one-sided on this one, because a good number of the people that come on a temporary basis are the ones that you can actually set on full time. These jobs are not suited to everybody, but by people coming in on a temporary basis, we can see, and they can see whether it's a job that they're suited to. So everybody's a winner on this one. I think it's a first-class initiative.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. Listening to you, one might even think you have some experience of that. Anybody else, any comments at all? In that case, the recommendation, as Councillor McKee says, is on page 84. Are you happy to accept the recommendation? Is that agreed? Fine, I see all hands up. Agreed. Thank you. We move on to item 6B, the proposed renewal of the lease of Blythe Meadow Car Park in Braintree to J Sainsbury's plc. Councillor McKee. I think you may be mute.
Mistake to make. Hear me now. Right, colleagues, the current leases, the council currently leases the Blythe Meadow Car Park in Braintree to J Sainsbury's plc, as shown on page 94 of the Cabinet report. The lease commenced on the 25th of December 1995 for a term of 25 years and expires on the 24th of December 2020. The current rent is £81,500 per annum. This car park comprises 117 spaces for both Sainsbury's stores customer and staff and the town centre visitors. J Sainsbury's plc wishes to renew its lease of the car park for a further term, and lease renewal terms have now been agreed between the parties, subject to your approval this evening and subject to contract. Following those negotiations, Asset Management are proposing to renew Sainsbury's lease for a 15-year term at an initial rent of £92,500 per annum, which is a 13.5% increase, and the lease renewal heads of terms are detailed in section 2, page 92 and 93. Note that the rent renewal dates are set and CPI annual increases are provided, subject to a 2% collar and a 4% cap on increases. Also note that the specific term to enable the council to provide additional pedestrian access the southern edge to access School Walk for future town centre plans. Two options were considered. However, neither was considered more attractive than the current lease arrangements with Sainsbury's plc. Therefore, the recommended approach is to renew the lease on the laid out terms. Recommended decision is that Cabinet approves the grant of a new 15-year lease of the Blythe Meadow Car Park in Braintree to J Sainsbury's plc from the 25th of December 2020 at initial rent of £92,500 per annum and otherwise on those terms and conditions set out within the report or on such other terms as agreed by the Corporate Director, Sustainable Development in consultation with a Cabinet member for corporate transformation. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor McKee. Are there any comments, anyone? Councillor Tattersley, I see, raised, yes?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jim. I'm really pleased to see that that we've negotiated continuing with 30 minutes free parking in there. It belies the claim that people make there's no free parking in Braintree. I mean, there couldn't be a car park any more close to the town centre, and 30 minutes free of any parking charges gives most people a good opportunity to get the bank and all the things that they argue that they need to do on a short-term basis without using the longer-term car parks.
Good point, Councillor Tattersley. Any other comments anyone has? Not seeing any hands up. In which case, the recommendation is on page 90, colleagues, of your agenda. Are you happy to approve the recommendation? Thank you very much. That's approved. We come on to item 6C, arrangements for development of land at Horizon 120 Great Notley, which is on page 95 of your agenda. And Councillor McKee, a hat trick for you. Off you go, please.
Thank you, Chair. Right, I think on the 8th of July 2019, the Cabinet approved the terms of an option agreement with Horizon Braintree Limited and Marshgate Developments Company. Marshgate are an established and reputable commercial developer based in Bishop Stortford. The agreement approved at Cabinet on the 18th of July 2019 was executed in January 2020 on the terms detailed in item 1.3, page 98 of the report to Cabinet. It's worth noting that the key points that have prompted the need for this item this evening: the agreement includes a 5-year term commencing on the 1st of June 2020 that does not allow the council to engage with an alternative developer, and Marshgate has the right to purchase up to 20 net developable acres out of the 47 available at the full market value assessed by an independent valuation. The 20 acres were deliberately not defined so that the intended occupiers were located within the correct zones as defined in the adopted local development order. The zoning requirements as dictated within the local development order mean that Marshgate has been and continues to market the whole site to a range of potential occupiers in the industrial and logistics business sectors. The marketing activity is proving successful, with a total of 15.5 of the 20 acres earmarked, when including the 2 acres for the council development of the Horizon 120 Enterprise Centre. Contracts have been exchanged with Carecode for the sale of 4.4 acres. Contracts were exchanged on the 20th of November on 2.1 acres for Essex X-Ray. I think your report says it was expected to exchange before the Cabinet meeting. Well, that happened last Friday, which is another success for the Horizon 120 steamroller. 7 acres are required for 7 industrial units being promoted by Marshgate through its EOS brand. 4 of those 7 units are under offer, with initial sale of 3.5 acres of land anticipated in Q4 2021, with a balance in Q2 21-22. Advanced negotiations are in progress with several other companies, including a regional residential developer, a high-profile retail group, and a distribution company. Marshgate are confident that up to 19.5 acres will be committed by mid-21. Given contractual, near contractual, and other firm offers being progressed with interested commercial entities, it is both necessary and appropriate that the council considers and implements arrangements to continue the development of the remainder of the site. Several options were considered by the strategic investment team, and the Cabinet has been involved in that option review process, and the core options are laid out on page 100. With the preferred option as of IV or 4, review and extend the agreement with Marshgate with a term and the land being increased incrementally as each 5 or more acres are drawn down. This option is being recommended as it builds on the current good working relationship and market momentum developed with and by Marshgate. When discussing the options for the future development of the remaining 45 acres, it was recognised that the current agreement is framed around land sales at current market values to return capital receipts to the council. It was suggested that the council could and should consider increased revenue returns from its investments. And to that end, it was recognised that Horizon 120 future developments could provide opportunities for capital investment for revenue returns to the council. It is suggested that any future agreement entered into with Marshgate would recognise this and offer the council first right of refusal of any revenue generating investment opportunities provided by leased premises. However, this option, before being exercised by the authority, will require further Cabinet approvals. I now return to the recommended decision on page 95. The Cabinet agrees that a deed of variation to the current option agreement with Marshgate is entered to provide for incremental extensions of the term and release of additional developable land after each sale of 5 or more developable acres to the maximum of the remaining 25 developable acres available at the Horizon 120 Business and Innovation Park. 2, that the deed of variation provides for the additional provision that will provide the council with the right of first refusal on any available investment opportunities within the Horizon 120 Business and Innovation Park. The Corporate Director Growth, in consultation with both the Corporate Director Finance and Deputy Leader of the Cabinet members for Corporate Transformation and for Finance, enter the deed of variation to the option agreement with Horizon Braintree Limited. to note that the review of the project's governance arrangements, budget provision and delegated authority will be carried out, and a proposal will be brought forward for Cabinet's approval in due course that will facilitate the Council of effective investment appraisals and decisions within a commercially realistic timescale. I so move.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McKee. Are there any comments or questions from this Councillor Cunningham?
Thank you, Chairman. I think the recommendations which Councillor McKee has just spoken to are a very satisfactory set of recommendations that at this critical point of Horizon 120, and it is at a critical point, it totally chimes with the ambition set out initially by the members' reference group on Horizon 120, of which some colleagues on this call have either sat or continue to sit on, in terms of looking after the high economic development ambition we have for the site, but also protecting the district's interest and the district council's financial interests going forward. So I think, as I say, it's a pleasing outcome and very happy to support.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Any other comments or questions from anyone? I'm not seeing any indications, in which case Councillor McKee drew your attention to the 4 recommendations on pages 95 and 96 of your agenda. Can I have a show of hands, please, those in favour? Fine, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. As was said at the beginning, there is no private session tonight, nothing that we need to take in private session. So that brings us to the end of this meeting of the Braintree District Council Cabinet at 2018, and I will declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much indeed for your participation, colleagues, and a good night to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. Can I please just ask the webcaster to confirm that the broadcast has ceased?